Good morning, everybody. Let's make sure we have our first slide. Okay, you like it? Good. I liked it too. Okay, let me get set up. Okay. So today I want to talk to you about blood. What's in our blood and where does the blood come from? My lab studies how our body makes us healthy and how it makes our blood healthy and how in turn the blood makes our bodies healthy. And why is this an important question, how the blood works? Well, it's important because one, we are scientists, so are very curious. We'd like to know how things work. Secondly, if we can understand how things work, we can then help those who become sick. And third, imagine if we could understand things so well that we can prevent people and kids from getting sick. That would be really a perfect world. So this is you, and you're happy because you're going to have a great day learning about science and interacting with real scientists. Now, this is your circulatory system. This is all the arteries and veins where the blood moves through the body, pumped by your heart. Now, the blood reaches everywhere. It reaches your brain. It reaches the tippy toes of your legs. And you might ask how much blood you have. Well, some of you have little less than a gallon of blood. This is sort of a large jug of blood. Your parents have about 1.5 of those. And as I speak, you can think about how much blood does a mouse have. So at the end, you can ask me, or I can ask you, how much you think the mouse blood is. Okay. This is your skeleton. And you think of your bones as giving you strength in order to be able to run and jump. But actually, blood is born in your bones. So here is one of your bones. This is a long bone going from your hip to your knee. And on top of here, we see a red bone marrow. This is where your blood is born. If we look under the microscope, this is another picture of this bone marrow. And you see that these pink areas are actual bone. And in between are all the blood cells that are being born there, develop there, and then go on into your body. Among these cells are stem cells. Stem cells are very special cells that we try to understand. Stem cells are special because they can divide and give rise to themselves, so they can duplicate and give more stem cells. But they also have special powers of becoming other cells. They can become red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets. And those are the cells that go on and function within our bodies. So next we'll talk about what those functions are. Here is your blood flowing through your arteries and veins. And these large cells are called red cells. And these cells give the color to your blood. I'll show a little more about this in a moment. These cells transport oxygen around your body. So they take up oxygen in your lungs and move it all around. The second cell in the blood is called white blood cells. And unlike the red blood cell, it actually has a bit of a whitish color. These cells are important for fighting infections. And many of these white blood cells have different functions, again, depending on what kind of infection is needed is being fought. Some neutrophils will fight bacterial infections, lymphocytes, other infections like viral infections, and eosinophils fighting parasitic infections. And you also have very tiny cells. Actually, these are not even cells. They're little pieces of cells that are floating around that are called platelets. And these cells form blood clots to prevent blood loss. So when you cut yourself, these cells know to go to the side of your cut and put like a little Band-Aid, but from within the body. So if I took a little bit of blood from you and put it in a tube and spun it down so that red blood cells go to the bottom, the red blood cells would make almost half of your blood, so 45%. If we look at white blood cells and platelets, they will make a tiny, tiny amount, about 1%. And the rest is actually this, what we call a straw-colored fluid, almost water, and that's called plasma. Plasma is really important, and it has also special functions. It carries proteins that prevent bleeding. It has proteins, clotting factors that help platelets work. It also carries antibodies that fight infections. These antibodies are made by some of the white blood cells, called B cells, and help fight infections. Plasma also brings waste products, things that we create during our life, your cells create. And it brings these to kidney and liver, which can clean it. It also transports nutrients to the whole body, for example, glucose that your brain needs to function. And finally, it regulates body temperature, so you can be not too cold and not too hot. So just to review, you have lots of bones, and bones are filled with red bone marrow. And the red bone marrow has some stem cells that are very important to make all of the components of your blood. So now I'll spend a few minutes talking about stem cells and what makes them special, why we care about them. So here is a stem cell. This could be any stem cell in your body. I'll specifically talk about blood stem cells. This is a DNA, and as Rick mentioned, DNA carries our genetic material, which was discovered here at Rockefeller. It also, in order to the cells to divide properly, the DNA needs to be mistake-free. So any mistakes that are being made in the DNA need to be repaired. And cells have many ways of repairing the DNA. So the cell will know that there is a mistake that was made and will try to correct it. So what happens when the cell, the stem cell, cannot correct the mistake? So this is, I showed you this before. This is a healthy bone marrow. This is from somebody who has perfect DNA repair. But when DNA repair fails, stem cells in the bone marrow actually disappear. They die. And now the bone marrow becomes empty. So there are no stem cells and no components of the blood. This is actually a bone marrow from a patient who has Fanconi anemia, a disease that we study. These patients lack ability to repair their DNA, specifically in these stem cells in the bone marrow. So how can we help them? Well, we can give them blood transfusion to replenish the red blood cells and the white blood cells that are the red blood cells or the platelets, for example, that are they're missing from their blood. But there is a problem. The lifespan, how long these cells can live, is quite short. So red blood cells can live about 3 months. Platelets live only about a week once they're made. So that means that we would have to give the transfusions, the blood transfusions, quite often. And that's not very feasible. So another way that we can now, with our knowledge, help these patients is actually to take the stem cells from a healthy donor. We collect cells from a healthy person. We use a special machine to select the stem cells specifically, and then we can infuse the stem cells into a patient. So this is called blood stem cell transplantation, and it's quite common, especially in patients like Fanconi anemia patients. We also are working as a field on what is called an autologous blood transplantation, when we take actually stem cells from the patient, fix them outside of the body, and put them back to make sure that the new bone marrow can be made. So here is just my last slide, more sophisticated about some of the questions that we're asking in my laboratory. We want to know, how does the DNA get damaged in these stem cells? We want to know how the DNA repair in stem cells occurs. Is it any different than in other cells? How does DNA repair prevent cancers from forming? Because our patients are also predisposed to cancers. And can we take advantage of the faulty DNA repair to better treat cancers, these cancers and also cancers in everybody else? We obviously have many, many more questions, and I'm very happy to talk about them in the questions or in our booth. So this is my laboratory full of wonderful young scientists who are learning about DNA repair in stem cells. And you can meet some of them. Rochelle, Danny, Kate, and their friends will be in a booth in CRC on the 3rd floor, where you'll be able to put together components of blood and take a little vial of fake blood home, and also learn about heredity and chromosomes. So I'll stop here, and I'll take any of your questions, and we'll take questions from kids first. Thank you.